of the internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-Bit Podsmash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer. We are your hosts,
Penguin and Termite.
We are a weekly video game podcast smashing together the ideas of culture, politics, art, science, and other aspects of culture that you guys might care about with video games.
Yes, as we said, we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So today we are drinking Devil's Backbone. Devil's Backbone? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Devil's Backbone
Brewing
Danzig
Company.
Porter. Baltic Porter.
Danzig.
Like Danzig. It's perfect for our podcast because we're both named Dan.
Except here's the thing.
Yo.
Before I even take a sip of this beer, which I haven't yet, I don't like Devil's Backbone as a brewery.
Really?
And I don't like porters.
Okay.
So I'm drinking a Devil's Backbone Porter.
I didn't get it for you.
I know. I'm not insinuating that you did or that you should. I'm just telling the audience.
All right. What do you not like about Devil's Backbone?
They just don't produce a lot of good beers. Maybe
they don't produce a lot of good beers that they distribute.
Right.
Their beers at their actual brewery, which I
there.
talked about, were pretty good.
Yeah.
But,
I guess if I go there and try some of their cool stuff. So here goes nothing.
all right, give it a shot. What do you think?
Not bad.
Yeah?
I can handle that.
What do you like about it? What's it taste like? What's it got
It's
for
kind
you?
of coffee forward.
Yeah, it's kind of, I like to think
That's got to be the roastedness.
they say it's a porter, but it's thick like a stout to me. You know what I mean? I think
It is full-bodied.
I think I mentioned that before in a previous podcast when we were talking about beer. I was like, to me, the difference between a stout and a porter is the body.
Mm-hmm.
And this has a body like a stout. So to me, it's very much a stout. I wonder if it has to do with the Baltic porter aspect of it. I wonder if that has any difference on the way they make it.
Yeah.
And I wonder
You
if it's more...
beer people out there listening to our podcast, tell us what you think.
Yeah, what's a Baltic
Baltic
porter
porter
versus a regular porter, and how does it relate to a stout? And how do stouts and porters relate to one another? Because I say that they have different bodies, but maybe I'm just crazy and don't know anything about beer. So
Most porters have this weird, earthy, mushroomy taste that I can't stand. And this porter does not have that.
this is very sweet.
Yeah.
It's got a very sweet kind of like light.
Yeah.
Not light's not the word I'm looking for, but very airy, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
This is also an 8%.
Yeah, it's nice.
And I wonder if
I can
the
taste the alcohol.
booziness,
Yeah,
it's
I
like
can definitely
affecting
taste the booziness for sure.
in that.
Yeah, it's good though. You should guys check it out if you ever.
This should
Actually,
be
they're
great.
distributing it right now. In fact, it was on sale. That's part of the reason why I got it. I got
cheap.
$1 off instead of $9.99. It was $8.99, and I was
You
like,
got a
man,
steal.
a steal.
Wow. Unbelievable good.
I mean, for beer, let's be honest, for a 6-pack, that's pretty good. Cool. What's going on? Anything?
I'm exhausted.
And
And that sounds very whiny. I'm not.
Why are you exhausted?
My
Tell us
son
why.
is sick. He may have the flu.
That's awful. That
And
sucks.
he has a flu shot. So the fact that it didn't work stinks. But it's been 3 days of fevers, clinginess, complete emotional extremes at all times.
Yeah.
He's either ridiculously high energy and happy in between his bouts of fevering, or he's off the rails crying and screaming and clinging. And there's no in between. So he's
Things
not
for me to look
just
forward
chill.
to, huh?
Yeah. Nuts. And he's been up every 20 minutes or so all night long for the last 3 nights. And so my wife and I are kind of staggering, when we each get him, but that still puts us each at 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. So I'm like, I've
I'm
gotten
sorry, man.
where normally I'd want 8 hours of sleep. 7, is acceptable. I should be between 21 and 24 hours of sleep. I'm at 11. Yeah. So,
I am, I'm just going to say on the record,
yeah.
I gave you an out.
What was that?
You didn't have to come tonight.
I know.
I said we could record next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I'm committed.
All right. You hear that, listeners?
Discipline.
He's committed to you.
That's right.
He's committed to getting good quality episodes out for you.
Quality might be questionable
So
in
if
my
I
state.
have to carry some of the burden this week, I'm happy to do so.
Well, Punchy Danny
This
could
is
be
a
fun.
this is a very penguiny topic.
It's a very
anyways.
penguiny topic.
Yeah, so we are talking today. We're actually launching another new series. So hopefully we're not overwhelming you guys too much with series. But that's why we're trying to launch more series now, so that it still feels like there's a variety.
Mm-hmm. We got 5?
Yeah, I think we got 5. I think this will be the 5th.
And we don't even try to fill our we plan our episodes 5 or 6 episodes at a time in chunks.
Yeah.
And we don't try to put a lot of series
We
in them.
specifically try to, come up with some, normal quote unquote topics in order to kind of space it out. So that that way it's not just like literally 5 series, 5 different series every week. But so we're launching a new series. We thought it would be really fun to sort of break down the sort of literary elements that appear in video games. So I don't know if we quite have a snazzy name, but I kind of tentatively named this series Video Game Lit 101.
And because it's lit, right?
Yeah, because it's literature. Yeah, because we're
it's literature.
Well, we're talking about it's also gonna be lit. I see where you're going with that. It took me a second, and you're the sleep deprived one. So we're gonna break down every time we do this series. We're gonna break down a different kind of literary element and talk about how do video games utilize that literary element to kind of make video games literature. So video games as literature. And what are those elements? So the first one we're going to be talking about is theme. So we will be talking about theme today, which is pretty cool. So
the theme of our episode will be theme.
The theme of our episode will be theme.
Yes.
Yeah. Theme. But yes, in other news, before we get too far into that, we'll just continue catching y'all up on what's good. I don't know if you heard or read about it, but did you read about the thing where
Sony pulled out of E3?
No, that's interesting as well.
Oh.
But I was going to say, in Fallout 76, which just launched, like, last week? Late last week?
Ago, yeah.
The players have already gotten to the point where they can launch nukes.
I'm not
I guess
surprised.
When you launch a nuke, it summons, like, a boss of some kind that you fight that has, like, rare loot or rare materials.
Yep.
Well, the players decided to get together on one server and drop 3 nukes in the same spot at once just to see what happened. And it crashed the server.
I did hear about that. I saw the headline. I didn't read the article.
I just think that's pretty funny.
It is pretty funny.
Were trying to. They were like, we're going to make a queen, whatever it is, queen beast that's like 3 times as big. But no, it just crashed the server. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the biggest news that I found this past week was that Sony pulled out of E3. Presentation and show floor, nothing. They're not going to be there.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's
insane.
That's really crazy.
I don't know what kind of deals people are working, but there's so many different aspects and people or companies involved in this decision. So ESA puts on E3.
Yeah.
And ESA, I think, is the Electronic Software Association.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure. Entertainment Software Association or something. They're kind of the hosts of E3, and they kind of manage the show floor and who's going to be where and what. And I don't know if there's negotiations with Sony and them, but now they have a giant gap at E3.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a race to fill the hole by other publishers? Is Bethesda, Square Enix, Ubisoft? Are they going to step in and fill that space? Is it up for claim, or like are they going to shrink E3? Like what's going to happen from that perspective?
Well, I'm just curious as to why they pulled out. Like
that's
Have things been going poorly for them?
Not at all.
Or do they just want to do their own kind of?
It's just going to be weird because different aspects to look at this.
Their Sony conference or whatever isn't until late fall.
The PSX is December.
Okay,
and they canceled this year's.
And so it's just weird that they're going to be missing out on a whole. I mean, E3 is like video game news,
right?
You know, Shambhala. Like it's important for upcoming releases and
obviously not for Sony.
I guess not.
So if you look at last year's Sony's E3 press conference, they only talked about 4 games, right? And they had, but they did it totally new in a new way that they've never done before. Remember they put the audience in the church?
For The Last of Us, and they, like, it was kind of stupid.
It was weird. Nothing normal, because like normally there's just a guy on a stage and they rotate through all the different games they're going to show off and the developers and such, and they feature things. But this was like a very strange new way of showing off only 4 titles, totally different, left field. And that was their E3 where that's the last time we saw Sony on a stage.
Yeah.
Then they canceled PSX, saying we kind of know what's coming. Days Gone, Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding.
Yeah.
And then now they're canceling E3. Again, they're backing out. So we don't know if they're like gearing up for their own presentation on the side. What that's going to look like. Are they going to do PSX next year?
It's just weird because with the way that games kind of release these days, is you kind of got 2 big seasons for releases. You got the big fall season of releases, and then you've got some kind of like scattered releases in the spring. But spring's kind of becoming a more and more lucrative release window for a lot of games, as we saw in 2017. A lot of big games came out, and 2018, a lot of big games came out in the spring launch window. So that summer time period where there's not a lot of games coming out, but it's such a big like news time. Like, I mean, that's E3. That's when E3 is. So I guess maybe it's just an expectation we've created, but there's also just not really a lot of releases. So it just seems like a really good time to kind of like get people pumped for gaming. And then the other kind of big news time is around the VGAs, like in December. So I can maybe see, maybe they're just trying to capitalize on setting themselves aside for that.
Yeah.
But it just is weird to me that they're like, yep, we're just going to abandon it altogether. And it kind of feels like one leg is being pulled out of the video game industry.
Right.
It feels like a betrayal to me. I don't know why.
It's weird. So there's a lot of people in the argument of whether E3 should exist or not. There's some people saying that it's kind of outdated. We have the internet now. We have Nintendo doing their directs. We got Microsoft doing their Inside Xbox videos. There's no reason to have these big giant productions and people on stages and spend ridiculous amounts of money putting everyone in a room when they can just do everything online, stream it. That's what BlizzCon did.
Yeah.
I mean, there's way more viewers at BlizzCon online than there are on stage, so it just puts it into question as to whether or not it's there. And then there's the other side of it's like, well, it's the biggest hype train of the year. It's doing really well. The ESA has been focusing E3 on the consumer now by allowing consumers to come in as opposed to just press.
Yep.
And so they've actually grown the show. Attendance is out the wit like crazy, and they're trying to refine that experience to cater towards consumers, people like us.
Yeah, and it feels like Comic-Con. It's like canceling Comic-Con because they're like, oh yeah, no, they're... Most people are consuming these stories in movies these days, so we don't need a thing called Comic-Con. Like, no, it's still an important kind of time for the community to kind of really get hyped, and get excited about things and come together. So I don't know why. I'm just salty about that.
I'm really curious
Maybe I'm old. Maybe I'm a fogey.
I'm curious about what third-party publishers and developers are thinking, because they kind of use the leverage the Sony and Microsoft conferences to show off their games. So like Ubisoft or Bethesda and Square Enix, sure, they have their own little like press conference things, but those games are showcased on Sony and Microsoft's hardware during their E3.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they feel shafted, oh crap, Sony just pulled out, and that was kind of our thing. Like, we were gonna show our game through that. Now what are they gonna do? Go to Microsoft? And I wonder what the conversation at Microsoft is right now. Yeah. Like, holy crap, we have E3 all to ourselves. Nintendo's always going to do their own thing. Yeah. We don't have to worry about them. But, now crazy. It's let's bring it, And there's so much involved. And then I'm wondering if like Sony has deals, if they're going to do their own presentation, if they've kind of paved over those possible broken relationships by pulling out of E3 by saying you can come be in our show and get more exclusivity. Because the idea is to get away from the noise. That's kind of what Sony's doing. E3 is just this giant umbrella of noise, and they're one blip in it.
Yeah, and I mean,
so now they're pulling out and like, no, we're just going to have our own. It's kind of ballsy. It's like, we're going to do our own show. And there's not going to be anyone else represented here except us. Yeah. If they do their own show, which has not been announced.
We'll see. Yeah.
But
it'll be interesting. So
it's crazy.
2019 will be an interesting year. So we'll see. And then
we'll keep you guys. We'll be all
into it though, y'all. So we'll keep you guys. We'll give you guys all the hot takes.
I mean, all they said was they're pulling out, and then we have all that. Yeah. All that conversation just by them doing one thing.
So that's an interesting thing, but let's stop talking about interesting things and instead talk about doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Sweet.
Favorite things. Favorite things is the first segment of our podcast. We like to try to shoot for like the 10-minute mark, so we're a little bit over time, but we start favorite things, and it's just a time for us to kind of catch you up on what our favorite thing for the week is. So something that stood out to us in the week that we want to share with you in hopes that you might also try to enjoy that thing as well.
Yes. So in case you guys didn't know, I'm kind of a closet NASCAR fan. I am a gamer and a computer scientist for work, and I like completely into tech and technology and nowhere near like redneck country culture at all, even though I was raised by it.
He doesn't drink PBR. It's fine.
I do love PBR, but I don't drink it regularly.
All right, well, that illustration was completely shot there. So
I like craft beer. Anyway, so NASCAR is involved I watch it. I don't like carve time out every Sunday to make sure I get all the races in, but I do watch them if I'm free and home. Yeah. So I have my favorite driver, and his name is Joey Logano. He was just crowned the 2018 Monster Energy Series Cup champion.
Wow, yeah.
So I'm extremely excited, because that's like when your team wins a Super Bowl. It's like...
Sure. No, I get it.
I'm all about it. I was so excited. I was on the edge of my seat. He was like a couple of laps in, getting chased down by some folks, and it was like... I'm not going to go into the intricacies of the NASCAR championship playoff rubrics and scoring and elimination of drivers and stuff, but it takes a ridiculous amount of effort and consistency over the whole season, and Joey Logano did it. Nice. It's awesome. So I'm very excited. Go Joey.
Yay. Go Joey.
Yes.
All right. My favorite thing is, it's going to be kind of simple this week, and I don't really want it to come across as a cop-out, so I'll try to do my best to explain. But my favorite thing is having a weekend with no plans.
Yes.
Like, just, especially this time of year where it's like...
Stop.
Yeah, it's just like everything is...
You've lost me. I'm done.
I did. Yeah,
that's it. You just put me in dreamland. I'm going to bed.
All right. Have a good week, y'all. Yeah, I this time of year and this particular month in general has just been like one thing after another: weddings, bachelor parties.
Yes, I've been busy.
And baby showers, and then now it's like right into the holiday season. So it's Thanksgiving's for us. We're recording this the week of Thanksgiving, so Thanksgiving's literally coming up, and then the weekend after that is another baby shower, and then the weekend after that is Smash, and then it's like okay, then it's basically Christmas. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just one thing after another. So this past weekend though, it was like an oasis. It was a lull. It was the eye of the storm, and it was like, this is great. Like
there was quiet.
Yeah,
for just a moment,
for just a little bit. Yeah, and we got to hang out with some friends, have them over to make pizzas, and that was fun. Just kind of there was no agenda, just other than making food and hanging out. Like, so we did that, and then Saturday we went to go see Crimes of Grindelwald, which wasn't very good. So I won't
from
you. You did hear
good.
from me.
Yeah.
So that was, I was kind of hoping that would be my favorite thing.
Yeah.
I was like, that actually wasn't very good. But still, it was nice to just go see a movie. It was the first movie I've seen since cutting out Movie Pass. So it was kind of not fun to pay full price.
I got to use Movie Pass.
Ooh, good
I
for
did.
You. Wow.
A Star is Born. We saw it, and I used Movie Pass.
Nice. So yeah, so it was just a very chill weekend, and it's nice to kind of have those every once in a while. I don't like having too many of those in a row. I start to get antsy, but when the reverse happens where I don't get a weekend and then like one comes across, it's just like, this is amazing. So yeah, that was my past weekend.
You had a free Saturday as well, despite my sick son keeping us up all night Friday night. Still spent 5 hours in the yard doing yard work because I was thinking along the lines of what you just said. We have all this stuff happening in the past. We have all this stuff looking forward to. Every single weekend is booked. This is the one weekend I have to do anything around the house. So I had to lump all of the house chores into one giant 5-hour sprint in the yard. Leaves, gutter cleaning, deck cleaning.
I hate gutter cleaning.
Everything, shoveling, gutting the shed because it's leaking water and things are getting damaged, reorganizing, bringing things into the house. It was a complete exhausting. No wonder I'm so tired.
Yeah. I feel ya.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next segment, which is, and we gotta really bring the zest this week.
We do.
All right, Ryan, I hope you're satisfied.
He will never be satisfied.
He'll never be satisfied. We were told that our rap horns were getting kind of wimpy with our DLC, so we
overcompensated.
We way overcompensated. You don't call my wimpy rap horns wimpy. Bow, 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 bow. Yes, DLC. DLC stands for downloadable content and is the second segment of our show where we do kind of like a mini sub-discussion, a just kind of fun, gamey kind of thing that we talk about, and it's completely downloadable.
It's extra.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
Like us.
Yeah, it's an extra little bit.
Extra.
Yeah, a little extra. So you can download it on the side, but not.
And not really, because it's
because
part of
you're
the
actually
podcast.
downloading it with the podcast. So yeah, we're giving you DLC with it.
It's included. It's
included.
made with
it.
Boom. Just like EA.
Yeah, exactly.
Pre-order it.
Boom. All right, our DLC this week. I've come up with it. All
You
right?
did?
Yeah. So
It's a great way to fill
since
dead air.
we're doing literary, like literature, we're talking about literature. We're talking about literary things.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to think about a like literary story. So it could be The Crucible. It could be Huckleberry Finn. It could be.
I'm so flattered right now.
Why?
You think that I know literary works and that I can just name one.
All right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Counting
for that
on
vote
you.
of confidence.
I am counting on you to dig down deep into the depths of your high school English classes and pick one literary book, novel, story, play, poem, anything. It can be right from Shakespeare if you want. So you're going to pick a...
I think I've got one.
Okay, great. I'm counting on you. You're going to pick a literary work, and then you are going to tell me which Smash Bros. Character you would substitute for any character in that literary work. Since Smash Bros. Just came out from the perspective of the listener, and you and I are going to be that's all we're going to be doing. So in honor of our future selves playing Smash Bros., and in honor of the great literature works of the past, what Smash Bros. Character would you substitute?
The Canterbury Tales.
Okay.
There's 13 different characters.
Oh,
so you just sub them all out for 13 Smash characters.
Pick like a highlight, which...
Lancelot is Marth.
Lancelot is Marth.
Isn't Lancelot one of the... I know he's a Knights of the Round Table person, but I thought he was also one of the Canterbury Tales kids.
I don't really remember Canterbury Tales that much, but I do
only one.
remember that, like, the characters I'm pretty sure were all, like... different professions. Like there was the
there
miller.
were classes.
Like there was the miller, and then there was the
profession.
baker.
Sorry,
yeah.
Thinking about
And they
pre-game
didn't have
time, pre-gaming life. Let me look up
You
the
can look it
Canterbury
up.
Tales.
All right, I'll do mine.
Canterbury Tales.
I'll do mine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do it. Lay it on me.
And wait.
Give it
for you.
Get it.
I'm going to pick The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is a poem. It's the thing about the albatross where he shoots the albatross and all the bad stuff happens.
What's an albatross?
It's a bird. It's like a big old bird. Well,
okay.
It's like a
golden goose?
Kind of. I mean, it's a real bird. There's such a thing called an albatross, and there's like a legend among sailors that if you shoot an albatross, it's bad luck.
Okay.
So bad things will happen to you. So that's what the Rime of the Ancient Mariner is, this long poem where he shoots an albatross and the like bad stuff starts to happen. Like the storm blows in and all sorts of bad things happen. So Rime of the Ancient Mariner, but instead of shooting an albatross, he shoots a pit instead.
It's Pitt,
so
like,
Pitt's just
swinging
like
through, doing his thing.
He's doing his. He's on a mission from Ballutena doing his thing, and then some sailor just shoots him with a crossbow and
pumps him in the chest with a double-barrel shotgun.
Bet some bad things are going to happen to that ship when Ballutena and Dark Pit gets word of
This
that.
is a family-friendly podcast.
Wait, what? Oh, did I say a bad word?
Yes.
I apologize. May or may not edit that out later. We try to keep it to I think usually we get none each episode. But
yeah, I think that word is fine.
All right, cool. And then the sailor, instead of an actual sailor, it's going to be, I'm going to say Robin. And he used a death
Fire
bolt
Emblem.
or whatever.
I was like, who's
Fire
Robin?
Emblem. Yeah, Robin from Fire Emblem.
Remember, I'm really sleep deprived, so
Yeah,
connections in my brain are stopped.
All right, what's your Canterbury Tale?
All right, so we have a Knight's Tale. It consisted of a bunch of fragments, and in each fragment's got all the different stuff. So the first one's a Knight's Tale. So instead of a knight, I'm going to say Marth.
Okay.
Instead of a miller would be somebody who mills a farmer,
bread,
right? Yeah,
mills
grain,
bread,
right?
uses in a mill.
So I would think
Peach, maybe?
King DDD.
Oh,
with
that's
his
perfect.
giant hammer.
That's perfect. I think the
food.
Miller's Tale was always my favorite. It stood out to
Really?
me for a reason. Yeah.
What is a reeve?
I don't know.
Well, the reeve's tale.
Uh-huh.
Samus.
Samus.
The cook's tale. Kirby.
Oh, perfect.
The man of law's tale. Zelda.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And Zelda's a great man of law.
The wife of Bath's tale.
Daisy.
No, what's her name? Bayonetta. Jeez.
That's perfect.
The wife of Bath's tale.
Yes.
Bayonetta.
I think you have enough. How many more?
There's
do
a
you
bunch. I mean, there's the friar.
have? Great. Awesome. Friar's Tale.
The Roy.
is-
The summoner. Robin. The clerk's tale. A merchant? A clerk?
Someone, money, Ness.
No, because merchant's there too. Who's a clerk?
Like a clerk is someone at a desk, like a secretary kind of would be like a clerk.
Mario.
Dr. Mario.
Yes. Yeah, there's a whole bunch more. We could go through all this.
You
but it's
did
kinda
good.
fun.
You did good. You did good. Yeah,
All right,
that's
all
all.
right.
We're 22 minutes in, so DLC is over.
Bow, 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 bow.
I'm glad we got to talk
DLC.
about literature, and I'm glad I got to pitch you in a really uncomfortable circumstance.
I was fine. I'm just tired.
All right, so we are talking about literary devices in video games, or as I like to call it, Video Game Lit 101. And yes, we're talking about theme. So let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. And let's talk about what is theme.
The central topic or idea explored in a text.
Yep. And in there's some subtle differences between theme in narrative and theme in art. And theme in art, the only real difference is it can be more of like a motif. It doesn't have to necessarily be explicitly stated depending on the type of art.
Meta.
It can be, well, again, because art can be really anything, but art can include things like sculptures and paintings. Like it can be more an implied theme than a actual explicitly stated theme.
Yeah.
So I think that applies to both. Like I think both definitions apply to video games because most of the time you have a narrative, but you also have a lot of visual elements that can portray theme. So I kind of pool both, but usually theme explores some kind of fundamental or universal idea, something that us humans who partake in art and literature, that we can all kind of understand or wrap our minds around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they can be anything to the nature of beauty, to slavery, to, man's place in the universe. So there are all these
societies.
Yeah. So there are all these big ideas. And that's why I like starting with this particular literary element, because theme is it's so big.
Yeah.
It's such a big thing. I think there was a good definition I read that said it's in contrast to the subject of a story. So they use Star Wars as an example. They said the subject of Star Wars is space wizards fighting in ships in a galactic empire or whatever, you know what I mean? Where like, so the subject matter is a little different from the theme is sort of the underlying idea of like, you know, faith versus science or totalitarianism versus rebellion and the nature of good and evil. Like all those are themes that are explored. And honestly, you'll hear us like, most often I don't think we're gonna hit a single like game or show or movie or book that we won't say has multiple themes. That's because most good writing has multiple themes. Most good writing has more than just like a single solitary theme. So there's usually like a handful of ideas. They also drew a difference. I remember in my research they drew a difference between the like intent. There's like the intended theme, so what did the author intend to be a theme, and then the reader or the consumer's theme. Like there's the interpretation. Yeah, the interpreted theme. So it's like there's a theme that like sometimes I think a great example of this is Fahrenheit 451, the famous literary novel about that people think is about censorship and like, you know, the dangers of censorship and the dangers of like removing texts from, you know, availability to the public because it's like crushing ideas.
Right.
But the author came out later and he said, no, I was actually trying to criticize like the rise of television and the rise of movies and how people don't read anymore. Instead, they consume. And so like there's a subtle difference there, you know, but so on one hand, it's, but there is a difference. Like, so on one hand, the author intended the theme to be, no, this is something that we're doing to ourselves. Whereas the interpreted theme, the commonly popular interpreted theme was more about, this is something that's done to us. This is something that's inflicted on us. So I always thought that was a very interesting like tidbit. Like, but that's, you know, again, just because he intended something, once it's written and once it's out there, it's sorry. Like, like what you intended isn't necessarily what ended up being written. And
then you end up with GIF versus GIF.
Yeah, exactly. So so that's kind of, those are kind of some important pieces of theme that I think are interesting and interesting to bring up when we're about to start talking about the lowest of all art, which is video games.
Apparently.
I say that tongue in cheek.
Yeah, you had air quotes
I had air
too.
quotes that the listeners can't see.
Go back to our like first episode ever where we discuss if video games are an art or not, and that'll give you the context you need to understand.
Yes.
Penguin's
Just
joke.
Keep in mind that was heavily laden with sarcasm.
Yes.
If I was on Reddit right now, there would be a /S after what I said.
Is that what that means?
Yeah, it means,
I'm so dumb.
What did you think it meant?
I had no idea. I just didn't. You know, I consumed all of the
You're
TV.
a programmer. You should know that, like, the / and then letter indicates, like, the end of something, right?
Yeah, it's
like,
a space or a special character. Sure, but it didn't make sense to be like
bold and then end bold, right? Isn't that
yeah,
like
that's
B
like
and
HTML.
then /B? Okay, okay, all right. That's about the amount of programming I.
But because I was raised as a kid on TV and video games, and I didn't read as much as I should, I skim over small details and don't sit on words as much as I should. So Fahrenheit 451. Is that what it's called?
That's the book, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the child of that.
Oh, nice.
What he's trying to highlight.
What he's actually trying to highlight. Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. So let's move away from theme in novels and let's talk about video games. Let's talk about video games. Yeah. So what are common themes that you've seen kind of pop up in video game stories? We actually kind of hit on some of these just over the course of our podcast, like in various other topics. So we can probably hit some of those. But what are kind of like what are some very popular themes or thematic?
What I like to do, as I always try to, is think about the history of games, the chronology of them.
Yeah.
The very, very earliest games were always like Space Wars, Space Invaders. What kind of themes would you think of with an alien invasion and you're trying to defend yourself?
Yeah.
It's like uniting everyone and common enemy and thinking about establishing alliances with countries and like not fighting each other, but
the nature and also the nature of humanity. But then there's also lined up there is kind of sort of a sense of, it's interesting. It's not one of those intended themes, but like you often in those kind of stories, there's kind of an underlying theme, intended or not, of xenophobia, like being afraid of the other, being afraid of the alien.
Yeah.
But yeah, always the theme of like protecting Earth, theme of like, uniting as one.
And that's pre-Mario. That's
also
like
advance
super
of technology.
Yeah.
There's both like in those kind of games, Space Invader games, there's both a simultaneous fear of technology because you're afraid of the alien, what they're capable of, while also like understanding that the progress of technology is the way to beat them. And it's only
spaceships and lasers.
It's only by
bombs.
getting our own technology, but therefore the sort of like supremacy of human technology, because you always overcome the aliens. So there's always this sort of theme of like, we'll win. That's another interesting point about theme is it can be as simple as Space Invaders, but it's got a theme. Like there's going to be a very basic theme in almost everything. It might not be a great theme.
Right. And you don't have to have a full written like dialogue book that has, or a narrative around it to try to establish the theme. Like Space Invaders is just top down, or like a shooter, you're a plane on the bottom shooting straight up at aliens, and there's no dialogue or text required to understand what's going on.
Which is interesting because that's why I brought up the whole idea of like the artistic definition of theme, because oftentimes with other forms of art, you don't have text to express it. You just have the imagery,
right,
and whatever. So cool.
And then you move forward to like Mario and Donkey Kong. Well, Donkey Kong was first. It's always like the save the princess. So it's the masculine character, going through the worlds to save the damsel in distress
from a monster. Yeah,
right. And there's a lot
overcoming
of that too.
Challenges, overcoming obstacles. I think is like a common.
Right.
That's like if there's one fundamental theme that's almost universal across pretty much all video games, it's the idea of like overcoming obstacles and getting stronger, getting better, because that's what you have to do as a player in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, continuing to move forward to like open world exploration in the 64-bit era, now you have a whole world to explore. So there's not just obstacles, but now there's exploration, discovery, trying to use intuition and like thought. So those themes are there as well. You're in a strange land. You're trying to figure out your place in the world, kind of that kind of thing. Yeah,
I love the especially you're seeing it more and more with modern open world games too, where there's a beautiful contrast they start to draw between like there's the theme of beauty that's just written into the world, like because you have all these beautiful open worlds that you can like look around in, but then contrasted with sort of the violence that are in the game. I do think of Red Dead immediately because that's what's fresh in my mind. But it's just it's one of my favorite kind of thematic motifs in games is sort of the contrast of the beautiful but the deadly. Saying like just because something looks good on the outside doesn't mean the reality of that world is going to automatically be great and good and idyllic. Because that's such a contrast to sort of thoughts, philosophies in the past saying if we can make everything look good, then everything will be good. And it's like that's so contrary to human nature, and so contrasted with what reality is like no, just because something is beautiful doesn't mean it's not also violent and scary and deadly.
Yep. And a lot of modern games now, I guess because of the evolution of technology, we now have the graphical prowess kind of nailed down. The jump in graphics, so to speak, from the PS3, Xbox 360 era to the current PS4, Xbox One era, that is the smallest iterative improvement on graphics that we've ever had. Yeah. Like the massive jump from 2D to 3D was early, and then from 3D to kind of better 3D was the PS2, and then from PS2 to like PS3 or the original Xbox to Xbox 360. Like that was a crazy jump in pixel counts and like realism. But then we just kind of like baby step to what we have now. Just a resolution increase and some better textures and stuff, right? And better lighting effects. But really, we're seeing a giant leap in narrative ability, in writing and voice acting. And we're seeing those like cinematic aspects come into games today. Yeah. And so we're getting better themes. And so we have games like Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War, which are PlayStation exclusives, but I'm sorry, those are amazing narrative themes woven through that are more complex and more evolved than we've ever seen in games before.
Yeah, think about like looking at like even like the Metal Gear Solid franchise, which is known for being rich in its sort of sci-fi philosophical explorations. Like again, theme can be very explicit or theme can be kind of implicit, but like it's either way. Like I think that's a very explicit use of where characters will just wax poetic about these ideas, these big ideas. But again, you can kind of see that build. I also see like a lot of common themes. We actually kind of talked about them recently. We had an episode about different theologies. Yeah. Every single one of those is a theme that pops up in games too, whether it's the idea of deicide or it's American exceptionalism we talked about and those things. Like those are themes that run through the games as well. Another one is just that's very common, for better or for worse, is the idea of violence as a means to an end. I think it's just like, especially in that kind of mid to late 2000s, like the aughts, that decade of the aughts, which is a Gaming by the Decade series that we'll get to eventually.
Yeah, we will. Where everything went grungy.
Everything just went, and everything like
realistic and violent.
Every video game had to be violent, and the implied theme of that kind of game is always like violence as a means to an end. Like, we can use violence as a means to an end, which is a very common theme that we see in human experience. Like, again, for better or for worse, that is part of the human experience, is violence. Like, I don't think a single human being can go through their entire life without encountering some form of violence.
Right.
It could be as benign as, like, verbal violence. It could be as intense as other forms of violence. And I feel like most humans go through their life without, or don't go through their life without inflicting a little bit of violence. Again, for better or for worse. But again, violence doesn't have to necessarily be something you do to another person. It could be something that you do to the landscape, you know, like the act of farming. If you think about it, is very violent.
Fracking specifically,
or even
That's
just like
mining
even just tearing up the earth.
Yeah,
there's something aggressive and violent. You're literally pulling something apart. And yet it's so mundane. It's so simple. So we just kind of live in a violent world, and so to see that thematically reflected in video games is not surprising. Is more or less what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not all violence is bad. I think I know that's kind of controversial to say, but like again, there's violence in just the way that the world is. Like, a wave crashing on a beach is a violent thing.
We know that.
Exactly. We know that.
We got wrecked.
Is it good or evil? No, it's neutral, but it's still violent. You know what I mean? So violence, there's violence, and then there's the intent behind violence. And I think that's interesting, because there's a lot of video games that actually explore that too, which is cool. So, and video games can explore that in a way that other things can't, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite themes? What are themes that you personally like really enjoy when they come up in video games?
What I'm loving now is the father-son kind of paradigm.
Or father-child, as you see with the Last of Us. With the dynamic of Ellie and
Joel.
Joel, that's it.
Yeah. And then of Kratos and Atreus, his son in God of War. I think there's a sister, quote-unquote, kind of theme that was explored with Horizon Zero Dawn. That was just the evolution of a child growing into an adult, but also dealing with ridiculous family kind of deep woven issues of identity and acceptance and place in the world.
Well, her father figure in that too, especially early in the game, right before her struggle with her father figure was beautiful. I thought beautifully written, and then her seeking her journey for identity, and that was focused specifically towards her mother. I say that in air quotes because
no spoilers.
Yes, there are spoilers. It's more complicated than just. But anyways, her drive to sort of meet her mother it's like she's a character you very rarely even get to see, but it's like woven into just who she is developed, and woven into the importance of the story too. Yeah. So I thought that I mean, the way that games are dealing, I agree. The way that games are dealing with the sort of parent-child relationships now is something that they've never really been able to do before, or at least haven't chosen to do before. Right. And I think I love it. I'm loving that's like my sucker point right now, is you give me a good quality game that deals with like parent-child relationships.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I'm going to give you another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another one that's coming out lately more than ever is mental illness.
Yes.
And so like Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. And then what was that really colorful game that was showed off at E3 that was about loneliness?
Oh, the
it was an indie game.
I don't remember.
Cannot
but
remember it's so intriguing because of the theme.
Yeah,
the art direction was also appealing and cool, but that like wouldn't make lots of indie games have crazy art directions, and it's awesome. But I don't play a lot of indie games because I don't have a lot of time, so I prioritize other things. But that game looked so good because of its theme of dealing with the emotional, mental
effect of loneliness. No,
and
I
I'm
agree.
dying still I haven't played it yet. Is Senua's Sacrifice, because dealing with.
Oh man, I wish I had a physical copy. I wish there were physical copies.
There are now. They just came out.
Oh, beautiful.
But
I really want to replay that. I played that late last winter, so now that we're getting close to winter, it's starting to like. I got a platinum it because I only have one platinum yet, but I'd love to take the opportunity to replay through the game.
Easy plat too.
Yeah, I'll have to actually just break the immersion a little bit and look at a guide to see where to get all the things. But that's fine because I've played it once for the experience.
Psychosis?
Psychosis. Well, psychosis is a general term for like a state of. I forget specifically. I'm going to butcher this, so apologies to any actual psychiatrists or psychologists who listen to this. But like my general understanding is like a psychosis is like a state of mind, like a specific state of mind that's considered disorderly, not necessarily a disorder in and of itself, but like anyone can enter a state of psychosis is basically what I'm saying. Okay. It's the same as like entering a state of exhaustion or a state of, but there are different disorders that can trigger psychosis and are kind of defined by psychosis. Schizophrenia is one of them, and schizophrenia specifically is the one that they
deal with.
I believe that they deal with in Senua's Sacrifice, mostly because of the voices.
But isn't depression kind of like woven in there too?
Yeah, poor Senua's got all kinds of.
And I wish there was more. Like, I hope this is kind of the first games that are coming out now that are dealing with this kind of idea. So I hope there's more to come.
And I hope they continue to do it in a respectful way. Like, again, because mental illness is so misunderstood. There are plenty of games that already deal with mental illness in a disrespectful way. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker. Some of my favorite themes, I am a sucker for and many video games do this, but I mean, just simple clash of good and evil, heroes and villains. Like, as cliche as it sounds, like, when done well, it's done very exciting. Like, again, one of my favorite video game, like, quotes, lines that I think it's so profound is just from Twilight Princess, where Ganondorf says, like, right at the end of the game, he's like, the history of light and shadow will be written in blood. And that kind of sounds cliche, and it is, but it's like that good kind of cliche. It's that kind of cliche that I'm like, yeah. It's just like, he's right. Like, light and dark, good and evil, whatever you want to say. I know I've talked about this before, that like when done poorly, that cliche is tedious, but when done well, when done like interestingly, it can be really compelling. And Twilight Princess, for being a Zelda game, which tends to be kind of light and simple on the stories, like, I thought that was really profound, that they were basically making a statement that, you know, like, this story is going to be written in conflict and blood. It's going to be written in warfare. It's going to be written in sacrifice. Like, the word blood in general is just so laden with so many like ideas, you know what I mean? And again, so the imagery of blood is tied to so many different themes. So when you say like the history of good and evil, the history of light and shadow, written in blood, it's implying sacrifice, it's implying conflict, it's implying bloodshed, it's implying warfare. And I think that's just so cool. So I'm a huge sucker for that. Like, just give me a story. Like, I'll always buy a story of a good, a hero rising up to the challenge and defeating evil. So
yeah, one other theme I want to talk about too, that I've only seen in Grand Theft Auto, is the massive satirical representation of our modern world.
Oh yeah,
and Grand Theft Auto, it's vulgar, it's very adult, it's very controversial in its nature, but in that is something I feel like every human being needs to get. Every human being needs to see, because they touch on things like in Grand Theft Auto 5, there's the tech movement and the whole like Silicon Valley effect on society and millennials growing up and what their tastes are versus like the victimized, kind of oppressed, disenfranchised folks, or at least they feel that way, and their clash. And like, it's told through 3 different story perspectives of diverse people. There's a rich white dude, and there's a black guy, and there's a trailer quote white trash dude who's like a drug addict and stuff. And so like, you see how they perceive the world from their perspective, and then like you listen to the radio, and there's just these ridiculous, and both liberal conservative agendas are blown up to hyperbole, and it's hilarious, and it's done so well that it's fun, it's engaging, and it just like, it gives you whatever. I guess that's the point of satire. It gives you a perspective of the world that's like, oh yeah,
that is ridiculous. There is something ridiculous about that. It allows you to kind of step back and say, oh yeah, that I may not agree, like I still might have reasons for believing what I believe, but it gives you a second, like, okay, yeah, that's kind of silly. Like, I understand where you're coming from with that. Like, so yeah, I agree with you. Well done satire is almost a literary element in of itself.
Ooh,
but like, that's
the theme of Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, like like satire is almost always wrapped up in theme. Theme can be used in satire and vice versa. So I do think that I would agree with you there. That's good. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about themes that you haven't really seen or don't really expect to see in video games that maybe you would like to see in video games, but just sort of themes. Is there anything that like that movies and books that you've read have maybe explored that you haven't really seen done in video games? Might be a little bit harder to grasp.
We're starting to see a little bit of this where there are things that are objectively like bad, like stealing or lying, you know, like murder. Those are objectively kind of bad moral behaviors, right?
Yeah.
But when you start to flesh out reasons why the people do that, I forget what you call that. There's like a sympathy to it. Is that what it is?
There's a term called sympathy for the devil.
No, that's not what I was thinking of. but you don't really see you can tell a story that's like this guy. Oh, it's when we were talking about this with the Stormlight Archives. I had sympathy, or you were talking about having Shallan's dad and his story.
Yeah,
you know, he looks like a complete bad person.
Yeah,
he's treating
like
his
on the
family.
outside.
He's beating his wife. Like he is a bad dude.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's like reasons why that are revealed, and I won't spoil those things.
Yeah,
and that changes your perspective.
Sure, it gives you kind of a sympathy.
Justify him
Exactly,
and it's still you know that it's objectively bad, but it fleshes him out as more than just a flat like plot piece.
Yeah, and explains his motivation. I
Yeah.
think the kind of general idea that you're looking for is 3-dimensional character motivation.
Yes.
Yeah,
and I wish that they would that games would do more with that kind of idea.
Because almost always villains are just villains. They're bad. They just want to destroy and take and
plunder.
Exactly.
They just want
like
power.
even in a good story, like I haven't finished Red Dead Redemption, but where I am in Red Dead Redemption, like they do kind of rely on a lot of one-dimensional character tropes for a lot of their guys. Like so they may have some interesting dimensions to characters like Dutch and Arthur, but a lot of the supporting characters are very one-dimensional. You know, I just want to destroy. I just want to do bad things. You know, I want to steal. That's kind of a little bit more into the sort of literary element of character. But I do get what you mean. It can be tied with theme because the central idea that a 3-dimensional character brings to the table is humans are more complicated than, and everybody's capable of good and everybody's capable of bad. So how do we reconcile that? And stories that really explore that through the use of their characters, it's always interesting when they bring it up in theme. Yeah, no, I can agree. I would love to see more 3-dimensional characters in games. There's a theme of like we're seeing two things. We're seeing a theme of fathers and daughters, like fatherhood. Really, like what does it mean to be a dad? Like because for a long time, fathers were presented as they either like die at the beginning of the story and they serve as a primary motivation for a character, or they're always like they're the bad one, like oh my father, Darth Vader, you know what I mean? The Darth Vader thing, I am your father, and so the bad father you're always trying to rebel against. So they're either a figure to motivate the main character or rebel against, or like aspire to. So they die at the beginning and then it's like or they died long before, like Fox McCloud's dead, James McCloud, you know what I mean?
I want to honor him and be like him.
Whereas now, so with Kratos, Kratos and Joel, we both see this character who really wrestles with what it means to be a father, and the answer is way more complicated. So in Kratos' case, you see a character who has to learn that, like, the reason why I can't connect with my son is because I hate myself. Like, because of my own deep-seated insecurities, which is something that, like, all of us fathers can relate to, is like we have a hard time relating to our sons because our sons or daughters because of our deep-seated insecurities. Joel really wrestles with much of the same, like his insecurity and inability to protect his daughter at the beginning of the story affects and impacts his ability to bond with Ellie, or his even desire to bond with Ellie, and yet he gets to a point where he realizes he has to let that go in order to, and so both characters, so again there's this really complicated exploration of fathers and sons. The other really big motif that we're seeing in the past, you know, we've talked about this on the podcast too. We had a whole episode dedicated to strong female protagonists. So we're seeing an increase in these female characters who are more than just eye candy, more than just damsels in distress to be saved. They are, you know, they're really, game developers are giving us the chance to get behind the wheels of these female characters and really see them as interesting, compelling, 3-dimensional characters and protagonists. The one thing I haven't really seen a lot of that I would love to see now with those two in mind is I would love to see an exploration of motherhood. I'd like to get, you know, because again, mothers are always, they're just, you know, they're the origin of the characters, and most of the time they're cannon fodder to be killed off within the first few narrative beats of the story. You know what I mean? To serve as motivations for the character. I would like to see a story where, and I guess the closest I think I can get is maybe Fallout 4. If you play it as the female character. But again, they even give you the choice. So the story is really written to be just parents in general, like searching for your son in general.
Did you play the female character?
I did.
Was it the dude gets shot at the beginning?
Yeah, the dude gets shot.
Does?
Yeah, the dad gets shot, and then you are playing the mother trying to find her kid, which I think just adds such a more interesting element to it, because
it'd be so much more interesting.
Like, I mean, it's one thing for a father to be searching for a son, that's great, but like a mother searching for their son is just so much more. It's like that's a part of, you know, again, like there's a bond between mothers and their children that I would love to see just explored more in video games. But again, Fallout 4 is not a great example because it was written shallow enough that the lines of dialogue only had to be recorded once. and therefore is the same. So I would love a specific story that really wrestles and deals with motherhood. So whether that's the child gets ripped away from the mother and she has to go save it.
Yeah.
But even that, like, I think it's still too shallow. Like, I would love to, I mean, like, do what you did with God of War, where the mother and the daughter, or the mother and the son, you're playing the mother, and they have to explore what this idea of motherhood is.
Yeah.
That's a story that could only be written by a woman.
And God of War kind of dips their toe in that water with
but again,
not
the mother character
things,
is just, well, it's not a spoiler because it literally is the start of the game. The mother, well, I see what you mean, but the mother character is dead at the beginning, so her role in the story
not
is just
the protagonist's mother, the antagonist's mother.
Freya, yeah. Never mind.
Like
yeah,
all of
point.
those motivations are all like
good. Yeah, it's true. But she's a side character.
Dip your toe in it. That's all they did. It's like there's enough there that they could do a lot more with.
Yeah.
I would love to see them do that.
I just want that to be, but I want, again, Freya's not a playable character. That's what I want. I want to
a playable character,
as a male who never will ever get to really understand motherhood from an experiential point of view. I would love to sort of have a game explore that.
Yeah.
In a way that I think there's plenty of female gamers who could play God of War and get a profound enough experience out of the relationship between Atreus and Kratos. In the same way, I think there's something to be had of that theme for me as an adult male gamer as well. So a way that I could probably relate to my wife who's going to have a child and raise that child and all of the feelings and insecurities that come with that. I want to see all that put as a theme in a game.
Yeah,
would be great.
That would be sweet.
So what are obstacles that video games face when trying to convey theme?
Money? Yeah, they have to follow the market. They have to make games that sell. They're so expensive to make. They have to assemble these teams. These writers all have to appeal to they've live. That's their job.
Yep.
They're all doing this for a salary. And
yeah, I would say that it's definitely hard to convey theme through the when it's an ensemble effort, when it's a team effort, because you have so many different minds all trying to put what they think their interpretation should be.
And you take a publisher who's got the money funding a developing studio.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of cater yourself to the publisher because it's their money, and you have to give them a product that they know will sell, and there's risk in that they have to risk over investment type stuff, money, business, marketing, it's PR, all that stuff. You know, I think it gets in the way of the art, but it's a necessary evil because
it has to get out there.
People need to get paid.
Right.
Like they got to live.
And it takes so much effort, so much work, and so many different people to make a video game.
Game budgets are nuts these days. But they're also making more money than they ever have.
Yep.
So
I would say that one of the biggest obstacles, I think, is a simple word, is fun.
That too. Yeah.
Video games kind of have to be fun. Like, there has to be some element of play. Like, which is great. Like, it's an obstacle. It's not a deal breaker. Again, as we talked about before, just because there has to be sort of there has to be some enjoyable aspect of a game.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say there has to be. I think we're starting to see more and more, like, at least the definition of what an enjoyable experience is starting to stretch a little bit more, which is great. And so I want us to keep going in that direction. However, games still have to kind of be designed to have some fun elements, like get your blood pumping and stuff like that, and that can be a huge hindrance because you think about just the closest medium, entertainment / art medium though is to video games is like movies.
Yeah.
And how many movies you go to, like, fun is like just one of many adjectives you can use to describe a movie. You can say, oh, that blockbuster movie was fun.
Right.
But then you can go see some like Oscar bait movie and just be like, there was nothing fun about that, but it was still a great movie. You know what I mean? I just don't think we've really quite gotten there with games yet. If you say, well, the game was profound, but it just wasn't fun, like, that's still a bad criticism right now.
Yeah, and there is, if you follow Kotaku at all, Kirk Hamilton's one of the writers for Kotaku. He reviewed Red Dead Redemption, and he used that exact distinction as it being not fun, but still profound.
But still really good.
And he said this is in no way a bad thing. He said he calls it kinematic fun, where like you jump on a Goomba and you have that satisfaction of like you nailed the timing and you bounce and you can chain that
your
together.
Brain rewards itself.
And it's like I've done something neat. Like none of that exists. The aiming mechanics, the shooting mechanics, the Deadeye stuff's kind of clunky and unresponsive, and like gaming with the video game horses are not easy and fun. Not smooth experiences. You have to tap X the whole time. So it's like it's not kinematically fun to play, right? But the game is amazing, and everything else that it does right, And interesting that you mentioned the idea of fun getting in the way, and I think that's the first, one of the first modern games is kind of branching into that same.
Yeah.
It's analogous to the Oscar bait versus Transformers, summer blockbusters.
Yeah, I wonder how, like, eventually, again, I really hope that starts to change, and I really hope that, again, the definition of fun starts to stretch a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I would love to see a BioShock game that didn't have to worry so much about being a fun shooter as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, as much as, like, it would be kind of sad to see some of the elements of it change, at the same time, I just want to see how far they could go with a really mind-bending, compelling thriller.
A lot of those walking simulators we're getting today, like Firewatch and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture and Gone Home and Life is Strange.
Yeah, they're not
like
incredibly
they're not
fun.
They're just like you just walk through a world and interact with things.
But they're interesting. Yeah, right. The fun comes in sort of the theme that they're presenting. Yeah. Cool. One final question to wrap up our first literary discussion about video games. This is one that we always like to talk about in regards to this thing. How does, other than the ways we really just discussed, how do video games compare to other storytelling mediums in regards to theme? So specifically comparing them to movies, we did a little bit of comparing them to movies, but how about like novels or comics or theater? How does video games compare or contrast to those mediums in regards to theme?
The first thing that I'm thinking of is a contrast. Okay. And there's something about movies that pull emotionally more than games have been able to.
Right.
Maybe that's just a me thing and not a generalization, but there's movies that like will bring you to the brink of tears or bawl. I don't really cry at movies.
Sure.
That's a whole other topic. But like there are emotional
We're emotionally
springs.
stunted men. Yeah, it's cool.
There are like moments where I could cry if I just leaned into it or like let myself go. I could probably cry at these things where video games have never even got me close to that. Like ever. I don't know if it's like the animation or the
the
lack of immersion that's there or something.
The uncanny valley, which is that idea that like video game characters look like just enough not like humans to be kind of eerie and odd. Maybe. Like they're not photorealistic humans, so there's something about them that's kind of like there's actually an evolutionary reason for it, but it's kind of not family friendly, so I won't explain it. But
yeah, I mean video games have inspired awe. I have had the same awesome experience. Like this is something that's absolutely incredible, but the opposite emotion to that is sadness or like relating emotionally to the point where you want to cry. And that's never even even stepped into my world with video games whatsoever.
I would say the closest it's gotten for me is Senua's Sacrifice.
Yeah?
Like, and wasn't so much, again, I'm too an emotionally stunted adult, so I don't really, like, know, like, it's not necessarily about tears, but it is definitely about that feeling of just being like, whoa, like, that's heavy, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, and just kind of like, I think a good sad story, one of the things that it does well is kind of makes you just sort of think about it. Yeah. And like think about what it was trying to say. And just kind of it's on your mind and makes you kind of like good melancholy. You know what I mean? Like a good kind of somber.
I was angry at the end of that, The Last of Us. Mm-hmm. Like I was mad that it worked out, but impressed with the balls needed to do that ending. Yeah. I was not happy with that ending at all. So that was an emotional response, but it wasn't like the gripping emotional. Like,
I would say that Senua's Sacrifice is what it got me there for sure. Yeah. God of War got me there in moments too.
Really?
Like not necessarily the end of it, but like the moments like when Kratos, came to that realization that I forget who said it. I think it might have been Mimir, but it was like you hate him because you hate yourself. I was like, oh, that's heavy. You know what I mean? Like that was crazy. So there were some really like deep moments I thought in God of War as well. I think that, so I'll do like some contrast and comparison. The thing about movies is that like movies and TV show, like any film is all passive. Yeah. It's all passive. Mm-hmm. You're all, you can't do anything to really change.
Maybe that's the difference.
You can't really do anything to change what's happening on the screen. It's all just kind of happening to you. Mm-hmm. The two that are more interactive and less passive are video games and theater. Yeah. Not all theater, but theater has the capacity for like an active audience. The theater has, and some scholars argue that all theater, whether it's intended to or not, the very fact that you're in a live audience means that something different, a different energy, a different quality is brought to the table just because you're in a room with people who are never all going to be in the same room together ever again. Mm-hmm. So that sort of like ephemerality, that sort of instantaneous nature of theater means that it's always going to be different, even if the performance is a sort of, I call it sit down, shut up, and enjoy your theater performance, which is what we get in cinema. But again, there's also a lot of theater that takes advantage of that interactivity of the audience members to really shape and change a performance. And it's almost always in very subtle ways. Mm-hmm. But I do think that quality of that sort of like we are shaping and creating and sharing an experience, and every person brings their own kind of energy and creativity to the table, is something that I think it shares with video games. And video games kind of can do that as well, as you and I have spoken many times on different ways that we approach, especially those games that give us that freedom to kind of play. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that that's really important specifically to the exploration of theme, because you can use that as a way to say something. You can use that as a way to convey an idea. Mm-hmm. The way that, like, it's something that movies can't and novels can't ever do, is you can't ever, like, the very way by which you approach the material is never a way to convey theme in a book or a movie, because it's always one mode. In book, it's just reading word after word after word. In a movie, it's just watching whatever they've curated for you. And so that experience is always going to be 100% the same no matter what movie or book you're reading. Mm-hmm. But with a video game, the experience can constantly change and constantly be something different. Yeah. And that is a way of conveying theme that isn't. So it's not so much the theme itself changes, because you can convey the same theme, but the means by which, and I think one of the best genres that illustrates that is horror, as we've talked about. Like, the way that video games kind of do horror and do that sort of psychological, it's the gameplay itself that like, again, like, just whenever you showed me that moment in PT where you have to actually go into your menu to find that thing, it's like, that's just such a creative use of, like, video game tropes and video game like mechanics that are necessary to actually progress the plot and the story and therefore convey a theme. It's crazy. So
I love that my reaction to the horror in PT was to, like, just run and not think of it. And you were like, turn around. You wanted to know your surrounding. You wanted the security of what, seeing everything around you at all times.
And being like, you can't do anything to me if I don't choose to go forward.
So, and I'm the opposite. Like, just lean, just go. Run through it as fast as you can. And so, like, I was just looping the hallway.
Right. And exactly. And so giving us the freedom to kind of do that really, like, again, it changes the message.
It does.
And adapts it based on the person who's, so it really, like, it leans into that interpretation, like the interpretive theme, because you can really kind of glean whatever you want out of that experience. So cool. All right, well, that was our discussion on theme. Let us know what you all think, whether specifically let us know what other literary devices you would like us to discuss on the podcast in regards to video games, and kind of deep dive and explore.
Listen, audience, we don't get feedback ever.
It's true.
From any one of you.
It's true.
At all. And
a few of you, a handful of real life friends who listen to this podcast will give us feedback.
I guess the dark side deals in absolute, so I shouldn't use never and always.
You should, because join the dark side, and Jedi propaganda is stupid.
So please actually go onto our Reddit and discuss with us. Hit us up on Facebook. Hit us up everywhere at our locations.
Yeah, if you post something on Reddit and we don't respond, then harass us. Harass us in the other forms of social media until we say something to you, because...
Tweet at us.
Because we don't always just, like, dip into our Reddit and see what discussions are being had. So if you're like, hey, I brought this up, like, Gmail us or hit us up on Facebook or any of those other forms and say, I want to discuss this with you guys, and I posted about it on Reddit. I guarantee you we'll be on that, like, I don't know, metaphors on literary works of fiction.
Sure. Icing on cake. I don't know.
Icing on cake. Syrup on hot cakes.
You can find us at 80bit Podsmash is our tag across all social media platforms. You can email us at 80bitpodsmash@gmail.com. 80bitpodsmash.com is our landing site with links to our iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, every other platform you could ever want. If there exists a podcasting platform that you don't see us on, let us know, and we'll get there for you. So please hit us up, interact with us, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, email.
Get on that like salt on fries.
Ooh, that's yummy. Yeah, dipped in ice cream.
Frosty specifically.
Yes.
Have a good week, y'all.
See you next week.